Getting things done. How do we accomplish more of the things we want to accomplish while living a stress-free life? In today's episode, we dive in with the famous David Allen, who is the author of the book Getting Things Done and is one of the leaders in the space of understanding how to live more productively, how to get more of the things done that we actually want to in our life and our business, and has made an impact on millions and millions of people's lives with his teachings. We're going to get into how to use this strategy the way David thinks and some of his philosophy in this episode. You're not going to want to miss it. And we all know David because of his best-selling book, Getting Things Done, The Art of Stress-Free Productivity, which has been published in 30 languages, and the GTD method has impacted millions and millions of people's lives. David's 35 years of experience as a management consultant and executive coach has earned him the title of Personal Productivity Guru by Fast Company and one of America's top 5 executive coaches by Forbes magazine. The American Management Association has ranked him as a top 10 business leader. And so you can see David has made a huge impact in the world, being named in Forbes, Fast Company, the American Management Association. You know, David and his company and his partners are dedicated to teaching people how to stay relaxed and productive in a fast-paced world. And so I am super grateful to have him here. David, are you ready to dive into things?
Oh, why not, Stephen? Sure.
All right. So why don't we start out by taking a look back earlier in your life? What events or influences from your childhood shaped who you are today?
From early on, I discovered what I loved to do was to make people laugh and to do things that improve people's lives, and they felt better after being engaged with it. And that's happened since I was a little kid. I was an actor as a kid, and where I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana. I then became a student teacher in college. I then got involved in, sort of studying people who had successful lives. I was a history major in college. Then pretty much went on a track for myself to find my own enlightenment instead of just studying people who had theirs. So discovered that, at least for me, academia was not a place to find that. So I dropped out of graduate school and went on a deep and intense personal growth journey.
So going back all the way until the point that you were a kid, you actually had this, obsession with studying people. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Not really studying people, but in assisting people. So, how could I discovered that making people laugh was a nice way to improve people's lives. So, as a very young kid, I didn't want to be a policeman or a fireman. I wanted to be either a comedian or a horticulturist because I loved growing plants and flowers. And I loved to, watch people sort of get healed in a way I couldn't have described it that way, but I loved, having people laugh around me. People's pain and that were in pain was painful to me. So anything I could do to help relieve it for me.
It's incredible when you think about it like that, David, because from what I've known about what you do out in the world, you're relieving pain every single day when people learn how to think more productively, how to get all of this stuff out of their head that they've got going and put it into some kind of organized system so that they can actually live and be able to focus on the things that matter most. Not only their work, of course, but the things that really matter most in life, like spending time with family and friends, but being in the moment, being able to actually be present.
Yeah, being present. And I couldn't have described that when I was a kid, but certainly now, and looking back in retrospect over the last 30, 35 years, discovering for myself first how valuable being present was, just as a very practical thing. In the martial arts, I trained and got a black belt in karate back in my 20s. And in the high levels of training, a lot of it has to do with sort of meditative kind of practices. There may be a spiritual component, but there's certainly a practical component. I mean, if 4 people surprise you, jump you in a dark alley, you do not want 2,000 unprocessed emails hanging around your head. So you need to be nice and clear. So the whole idea about being clear was attractive and important to me. Discovered techniques for myself so I could remain clear as my life got more professional, more complex. I turned around and then, after I started my own small little consulting and coaching practice back in the early 1980s. Discovered the techniques that worked for me worked exactly for my clients the same way. So more control, more focus, more space to think about meaningful things in your head. So to your point, there was a kind of a cognitive mindset or a way to think about things that you didn't have to totally transform yourself. You could just redirect yourself to think in a certain way. Because I'm the laziest guy you ever met, Stephen. So that's why I came up with getting things done, was as a way to make sure you get to clear space as quickly and easily as you can. And because it's the most practical way to operate in your life. It's the best place from which to cook spaghetti or tuck your kids into at night or write a business plan or whatever it is that you're trying to focus on. So I discovered that both for myself, and then the techniques I discovered that helped me do that also were universal. They helped anybody who implemented these techniques. So I went, wow, okay. And because I was also hungry for models that when I started my own consulting practice, after being a good number two guy for a lot of my friends, I helped a lot of them work their businesses and improve their businesses and so forth, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I discovered they pay people to do that. They call them consultants. It's like, oh my God. So I hung out my shingle, Allen Associates, 1981, 82, something like that. Anyway, so I started to do that. And then somebody in the big corporate world said, wow, we need that same kind of result, people to be more focused, more accountable, more clear, more controlled, more relaxed in our whole company. Can you design something around what you've come up with so that we could train a lot of people with this as opposed to just one-on-one? So I designed a pilot program in personal productivity for 1,000 managers and executives at Lockheed, 1983-84, down in Burbank. And that worked. It was quite successful. So it surprised me. I suddenly found myself thrust into the corporate training world. And so that's the beginning of a very long story after that. But that was in 1983-84.
Well, it's amazing because when people hear about learning about time management or productivity, they kind of feel bored about it right off the bat because they're like, I don't need to be more productive. I just need to get my work done. But at the core, what this is really about is it's about how can you be more effective in everything that you're doing. And like when I first learned this system, I was a little bit overwhelmed. I thought, well, there's so many steps to it that it seemed confusing at first, but only once I actually took a moment to reflect and understand how to apply it in my own life did I realize that it actually allowed me to do most of the things that I wanted. And so at the end of the day, isn't that what people want? Like to be able to cook spaghetti with a clear mind, to be able to, enjoy time with family, and to be able to get the work done that needs to get done and only do the work that is most important.
Well, if you know what you're doing, efficiency is your only improvement opportunity, and style. I mean, if I'm trying to walk out of the room, I'm always figuring out what's the easiest way to get out of the room. And I may not take that route. I might want to go boogie around and do, style and do some other things, but at least being aware of how can I use the least amount of energy to produce the most amount of result, which is really what productivity is about, or at least improving productivity. Everybody's already productive, Stephen. Everybody's producing exactly what they're getting. When people say, I want to be more productive, what they're talking about is I want to be able to get done what I'm getting done with less effort, or given the effort that I'm putting in, I'd like to produce more results. Either way, either one of those is an improvement in productivity. So I just figured, oh, what the heck? And I have to admit, my apologies. I've never had any traditional or formal education in time management, business, or psychology. All of my stuff that I found up, that I wound up, discovering and uncovering and formulating, all came from street smarts. And it all came from lots of experience with myself first, and then working that model with a lot of other people. Malcolm Gladwell talks about 10,000 hours, sort of behind the expertise in most people. I've probably spent 50,000 hours, quite literally one-on-one desk side with some of the busiest, best, and brightest people on the planet, actually implementing this methodology that I came up with.
And that street smart is clear because like this stuff works. It works for almost anybody who uses it once they actually learn just a couple key principles. But I've got a quote here, and it's one of my favorite quotes from you. And it's, your mind is for having ideas, not holding them. I'm curious, like, what does this mean to you?
Well, I discovered in the martial arts and my own meditative and spiritual practices, 35, 40 years ago, that, having a clear head is makes anything you're doing a whole lot richer and more effective and efficient. So it's really about stop using your head as your office. Most people are trying to manage a whole lot of stuff in their head. And I discovered 35 years ago, again, on the street, just for myself personally, and then working with lots of people since then, that your head's just a really crappy office. And now in the last 10 or 15 years, any of the cognitive scientists that have been studying how the brain works basically have just validated that. The new data is that your mind can basically hold about four things. And as soon as you have more than four things you're kind of trying to keep track of or prioritize or manage the relationship between, you're going to sub-optimize your cognitive process. You're not going to be as smart as you could be. You're not going to be as quick as you could be. You're not going to be as present as you could be. And so, hey, duh, it's just kind of the way the mind doesn't work. Your mind did not evolve to remember, remind, prioritize, or manage relationships between more than four things. It does that very well, by the way. Your mind evolved so that you could use long-term history and pattern recognition to say, oh, there's a tiger over there. There's strawberries in the bush. There's a thunderstorm coming. The baby's crying. Yeah, you do that. You're doing that right now. That's why you think that's a microphone and that this is a podcast as opposed to just vibrations of light and sound. You're doing pattern recognition and long-term history and making sense out of your world. The computers can't even start to do that. They're starting to do a tiny little bit of it. But then you go to the store for lemons and you come back with six things and no lemons. What happened? You tried to use your head as your office and it just doesn't work very well.
So you've got to get those things out of your head. And there's a clear process to this. And for those people who don't know about GTD, like I keep saying, it's really a way of thinking. And when you can get that way of thinking to start happening and you follow this process, things start being much simpler, to organize your to-dos and your priorities. But David, will you tell us a little bit about this way of thinking and kind of give us a little bit of an overview?
Yeah. And Stephen, I didn't make this up. I recognized it. Everybody listening or watching this at some point felt confused or overwhelmed at some point and sat down and made a list and felt better, felt more controlled, more focused about whatever it was. And so if anybody reverse engineered all that, they never keep anything in their head again. There's nothing changed in their world. Except what changed was how they were engaged with their world. So I just started to recognize what it is that we do that allows us to disengage with our world, but in an effective way. In other words, there's a lot of stuff you don't have to complete to get them off your mind, but you do have to capture them, clarify them, organize the results of that thinking in some trusted way. That gets it off your mind. Most people listening or watching this are probably not worried about or thinking about where they need to be 2 weeks from Wednesday at 3:00 in the afternoon. Why? They have a system. It's called a calendar. They've got the content in there that they trust needs to be there, and they trust they have a behavior that will look at the content at the right time. Well, duh. So anybody who says you don't need to get stuff out of your head and create appropriate lists of things you need to be reminded of at the right time, you're kidding yourself. They're intellectually dishonest. Or either that or just throw away your calendar and say, oh, my head can do it all. Fine. Go right ahead. But so the basic process is to there's a 5-step thing of the way we get control of any kind of a situation. You need to identify or capture the stuff that's got your attention in the situation. What's got my attention about my work, my life, my family, the pandemic that's going on, whatever. What's on my mind about any of that? So you have to identify what those things are, write them down, get them out of your head, capture them some way. And then step 2, you need to make some real clear decisions about what those things mean and what you're going to do about them, if anything. You're actually going to do something about researching karate lessons for your kids? You're actually going to do something about hiring a VP of marketing? You're actually going to do something about getting a divorce or not? What are you going to do about those things? So that's step 2, is clarify. Is it an actionable item, yes or no? If it's not, then you'd reference it, you trash it, or you just park it and incubate it in some place. You'll see it later on. If it is something that's actionable, you need to decide what's the very next action you would need to take. Very specific next action. Is that an email to send? Is that a website to surf? Is that a conversation to have with your life partner? What's the next thing you would need to do if you're going to move the needle toward closure on whatever this thing is that has your attention? And if one action won't finish it, what's the project you need to keep track of until it's done? So determining whether it's trash, reference material, or incubate, or if it is an actionable item, what's the next action? And if one action won't finish it, what's the project? That's the thinking process. That's really where the power of this model is. And I didn't make that up. I just recognized it. That's how you get your kitchen under control, is how you get your company under control, is how you get your consciousness under control. You capture, you clarify, you organize, stuff into some appropriate place. You then reflect and review what's the content of that, so that then you're making good, trusted choices about what you do, as opposed to just being driven by whatever's latest and loudest in your world. So again, I just recognize those 5 steps. It's not one thing. It's not go prioritize or go get organized. Yeah, those are some key components that come in there. But most people's organization is just rearranging incomplete piles of unclear things. So that doesn't help at all. You really have to, it's a holistic model. You really need to do all of that. If you're going to get your kitchen under control, you need to if you walk in and you've got guests coming in an hour and your kitchen's out of control, first thing you notice is what's off. What's not on cruise control. Yeah, that's right. Then what do you do? Well, that's a dirty dish. That's a clean dish. Those are spices. Those are whatever. You clarify what those things are that are off. Then what do? You put those things where they go. You organize the dirty dishes in the dishwasher. You put the spices back where spices go. You organize. And then you step back and reflect on the situation. Okay, say, okay, and what are we going to do? And what time is it? And okay, and you pull out butter and you start to create some appetizers. All right, so I didn't make that up. I just recognized it. But those are 5 very different phases and very, very different practices, each one of which has its own tools and its own best practices.
Well, it's a natural process that we tend to go through. But a lot of times what I've noticed with myself and with clients and other folks that I've worked with in the past is that sometimes we'll skip a step and then things really get off, right? If we capture, but we don't clarify, then I've got a list and I've got something on that list and I'm ready to go work on it, but I actually have no idea what I need to do. And then we end up going into procrastination mode. We, avoid it, whatever. And we don't actually start getting those things done. Huge problem.
People fall off the wagon at any phase of those 5 phases. First of all, most people haven't really captured everything that has their attention. They're still walking around with a bunch of stuff banging around in their head that tends to distract them when they're trying to focus on anything. So that's the first thing that people miss, is they don't capture everything. They don't get it out of their head. Second thing is, to your point, even if they get it out of their head, they've got a list of things that are still unclear about what to do about it. And then even if they've done that, they don't have a trusted system to park reminder of the calls they need to make and the websites they need to surf and the stuff they need to do at their computer and stuff they need to talk to people about. If they haven't got that in some trusted place, they know they're going to see at the right time when they're in the right context. They'll be off the wagon again. And even if they did all that, but they don't review what the contents of this are regularly. And also, as you know, the weekly review is a huge habit that to build in, which is to keep your system complete and current, because the world's going to come at everybody a lot faster than people can keep this pristinely clarified and organized. But you need to make sure you've got placeholders for stuff. And every 7 days or so, you need to make sure you bring up, circle the wagons, or you bring up the rear guard, and get current again. With all that stuff. Otherwise, you don't trust your system. As soon as you don't trust your system, you think it's too much work. And so the stuff sucks back up into your head and you're back where you started. So it's very easy to fall off this wagon, at any point in the game.
Yeah. And so for the listeners, I know you guys have all been through it, where you started getting organized, you started to take action, started to follow a process like David's talking about, and then you missed a week and your list or your entree, your list of all the things that you've got to do kind of gets way out of whack. You've got to get back in there and reflect, what's the most important thing to do? What's going to get me closer to my goals? How should I go about getting these things done? It's so important. And once you skip that review for a week or 2 weeks, all of a sudden now it feels overwhelming and it's difficult to get back on track.
And what's counterintuitive, Stephen, about this model, and I understand it, is that is that in order to really be present with the most important stuff, you need to be really present with the less than important stuff. Otherwise, it'll start to take more room than it deserves. As soon as the thought, I need cat food, pops into your head twice, that just means you're inappropriately engaged with your cat, right? If you got a cat, you want to keep your cat, and you don't want the cat to jump on your face at 3:00 in the morning and say, God, I'm hungry, got to eat food, then you need to handle that. If you don't, then cat food will take up more psychic space than it deserves. So you need to be equally accountable for anything that pops into your head so that you can be accountable to yourself, to your point, to focus on the most important stuff. But that's why a lot of the world and a lot of people are feeling stress. It's not so much that people are overwhelmed. I mean, one of the things I've sort of re-understood in the last 2 or 3 years, overwhelm is not really the big issue. The overwhelm happens when your building catches on fire. Right. You're feeling overwhelmed with the stuff you've got to do to survive, to get out of the building and to save the stuff you need to save, et cetera. But you handle that. The biggest problem is what I refer to now as ambient anxiety, the cat food that you haven't handled, the conversation with your life partner that you're avoiding that you know you need to have. It's all that other stuff that may not be, if you sat down and said, what's my most strategic thing to do right now? That's also good to do in terms of your business, where you're going, and, what are the things that are going to give you the highest payoff if you complete those projects, for sure. So you don't neglect that exercise, but if you don't handle all the other stuff, then what it does is it sort of takes wind out of your sails to be able to focus appropriately with the appropriate present tense energy that you need to on the more important things.
So what you're actually saying is that it might not even be the work that you have that's stressing you out. It's all the other things that are in your head that are preventing you from actually moving forward on the thing that you know you need to get done.
Yeah, very much so. That's oftentimes the truth. And the reason I know that is because I spent thousands of hours, with some of the smartest, busiest people you'd ever meet, getting them to empty their head and getting them to make the appropriate decisions about the stuff that has not been the emergencies, but all the other stuff. And then they suddenly, wake up. They suddenly are conscious again. They're suddenly like, oh my God, they're suddenly inspired, to focus on the inspirational stuff. I never tell people what they ought to be thinking about. I just ask them all the questions so they can get their head clear and then let them organically and naturally emerge with the things that they ought to be thinking about.
So in summary here, like the big step, we got to sit down. We've got to capture all of the things out of our head in totality, right? I highly recommend you go out and get the book, Getting Things Done, so you can get the full system. But just from a high level, we got to write everything down. We've got to capture it on paper. Anything that's related to our personal life and our business life, all of these thoughts into one place. We've got to go through those thoughts, clarify them, understand what is actionable, and then we've got to organize those into what are things that we're going to do, what are things that we're going to keep, what are things that we've got to take action on right now. And we've got to do all of this just so that we can get in the right mind state before we do anything. So what else would you want to add on to that for people so that they make sure that even if they were just going to go take action right now, that they can get these things out of their head so they can actually start making some progress from a place of, calm centeredness and not having to feel all that stress and that ambient anxiety that you're talking about?
Well, people often ask, how long does it take to get value out of this process? I say, well, how long would it take you to get these dumb little tools called pen and paper and write down the top 10 things that are on your mind right now that have your attention? I need to set up my home office. I need to make sure that I'm set up with my family and my kids right now in terms of how we're doing their schooling. I need to make sure, Just write down 10 things, the first top 10 things on your mind, and then go through each one of those and say, what's my next step on that? What do I need to do? And actually write those down. I need to email Joe about that. I need to talk to my son about whether he wants to do X, Y, and Z. I need to order this on the web so that we have, just make the next action decisions about all of them. Watch how that feels. How long would that take? Yeah, about 3 minutes. Right. So you're not going to take you long to experience the value, and people automatically never had anybody. That's why I know this works, is nobody's ever done that and not felt more in control, more focused, whatever. And that's only 10 things. That's only 3 minutes. If you really, really, really wanted to do this, it'll take you a couple of days, or at least a day where you just sit down and say, okay, let me truly gather everything that's got my attention. And that means walk around where you live and capture that light bulb needs to be changed. I need to fix that thing. I need to, put some WD-40 on that door because it's squeaking over there. Oh yeah, we were going to talk on get it all. So that for most people takes somewhere between 1 and 6 hours just to identify all the stuff that's got their attention. And then it's going to take usually, quite a number of more hours to go through all those. And to your point, to clarify next actions required on any of those things. And also at the same time to build and to, refine a trusted system that'll hold the reminders. Here are all the errands I need to run. Here's all the stuff I need to talk to my life partner about. Here's all the stuff I need to do at my computer. So don't shoot the messenger. I'm just reporting. That's what it takes. If you really want to get a clear head, that's what it would take. But it's not going to take you long. As soon as you start to do any of this, you're going to feel better. You'll sleep better. So you just keep a pen and paper by your bed. You'll sleep better. So you capture some ideas that you wake up with.
Yeah, it's so much simpler than people think, and they get overwhelmed because they just don't want to do it because they've got so many things in their head. They've always been doing it like that. But, just like you said, write 10 things down, see if it works. I bet you're going to feel better. And then if you do feel better, hey, maybe you want to take a whole day to get everything out of your head and get your life organized so you can really take some action in the right direction. So we've made it to the growth rapid fire round where the questions are quick, but your answers definitely don't need to be. So tell me, David, how would you define success and what is success to you?
Success means, achieving or accomplishing desired outcomes. If you go to a party to boogie and you don't boogie, it's an unsuccessful party. You go on a vacation to relax, you don't relax, that's unsuccessful. To your point, early on, Stephen, where you said productivity has actually got a lot of baggage as a word because most people think about work and sweat and harder and oh my God. But productivity simply means accomplishing what you're trying to. If you want to be happy tonight and you're not happy, that's unproductive evening. If you want to have fun at dinner and you don't have fun at dinner, come on. So success would be, gee, I want to have fun at dinner. And you'd have fun at dinner. Yay. Good job.
I mean, that sounds like the good life to me.
Well, sure. Just most people think about productivity. They think about it usually in material success in a way, more money, more clients, more, whatever. Nothing wrong with that. That's fine too. However, success also is what experience are you after? Why do you want more money? I want to feel more freedom. Well, what could you do today that could make you feel freer? Oh, wow. And suddenly you could do some meditation, or you go for a run, or you decide to sit down and spend some quality time with your kids that you've been avoiding. And you suddenly feel freer. Then they go, hey, dude, success. So it doesn't have to be any big thing. But you do have to define what it is you're after.
You've got to clarify.
Yeah.
You've got to clarify what you're after.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say it doesn't happen by itself. I think there's a part of us, I work on a hypothesis that we have a higher self. There's a part of us that knows why we're on the planet, what we're really about, what we're supposed to be doing. And it loves us. It takes care of us whenever it actually becomes a good guide for you if you're willing to listen, stop the world and listen to that inner voice, that still small voice inside. So, people aren't stupid. They're a bit numb. And so as soon as you kind of wake up a little bit, you can start to pay attention to the intuitive voices or voice that you need to pay attention to. And, it's never going to hurt you. You just need to pay attention to it. And you kind of need to follow its admonitions. I'm still working on that. I'll be 75 this year. So, but I feel like I'm still a beginner, at really paying attention to that voice and what it would have me do. But you don't have to work. Sometimes you don't have to work too hard at figuring out what to do. You need to relax and listen because the what to do is already there.
Wow, that's amazing advice. That's really incredible.
Well, that's maybe that doesn't work for everybody. That's worked for me. At some point I was agonizing about what I wanted to do with my life because there were just so many things, and I had so many things like, oh yeah, but is this the right spiritual thing to do in terms of why I'm on the planet and what it's like, yada, yada, yada. At some point, I think I was driving along a freeway in Marin County in California, and suddenly this blinding, what I call a BFO, the blinding flash of the obvious sort of hit me in the face. It said, gee, David, you don't have to worry about where you're going and what you need to be doing. All you need to do is to handle what's in front of you with elegance and as much completion as you can, because you've created so much, not only in this life, but in many others, that the thing will automatically emerge once you finish what's in front of you. And I've never looked back since then. That's how I've done it. Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't set goals and inspire yourself and have big things like that, if that's what the voice is telling you inside of you that you really need or want to do. But just make sure that's coming from someplace that's real.
Yeah, listen to that inner voice inside. That's huge. So, David, what are some of your keystone habits, the things you do on a daily or weekly basis that have led to you living the good life?
Here's my in basket. It's empty. Right? I learned that 35 years ago and never stopped. And that is, I keep my backlog zeroed out on a 24 to 48 hour basis, because I discovered that if you don't do that, any new thing and surprise or new inputs are first of all, you're not sensitive enough to hear the new input if it's internal. And secondly, you're going to be disturbed if it's coming externally. You're getting emails you didn't expect, people walking in and giving you things you didn't expect. And so, I learned, years ago that when I'm not doing anything else, I am cleaning up, because there's a surprise coming toward me and an opportunity coming toward me that I can't see. And when that thing happens, I want to have as clear and clean a deck as possible to be able to then make smart decisions about how to engage with it and what to do. So that's, probably I have to think about whether that's, I'd say, the main one. That's certainly one of the main ones in my life in terms of behavior or a habit or a practice that I do continually.
Yeah, getting super absolutely clearing off all the stuff out of your mind. I can see that.
Well, let me back it up a little bit, Stephen. I mean, to me, the two most important things that we're here on the planet to experience are completion and creation. Mm. We need to finish what we put in motion. You need to be accountable and responsible for the things that you do put in motion, whether that's now or previous lifetimes or however you might want to believe any of that. But it's being able to recognize, what are the things I need to finish, complete, handle, and deal with that I've already put my attention and my energy into. See, I don't care about your email. Mm-hmm. You do. So you have your own ecosystem that's incorporated stuff that you need to deal with. I've got mine too. So I need to be accountable to those things and manage the things that I've allowed come into my world. Right. So that's the completion aspect of it. And then once I'm clear, once I got an empty in basket, what do I now do? What do I do with that? Because I can't stop creating. You can't stop focusing. You can't stop that as long as you're conscious. You're still focusing whatever you're focused on. You're still focusing on that, and you're reinforcing that, whatever that is. So then I need to be accountable for where I'm now putting my creative energy, so I don't create a bunch of stuff that I don't want to have to complete, or that are not the most strategic or valuable things for me to complete. So completion and creation, that's why I can't stop talking about GTD or this methodology, because that's really what it comes down to. It's like, where've got your energy, guys? What's got your attention? You're creating that. You're the one who's making those commitments with yourself. And then once you get nice and clear, what kind of new commitments should you be making for yourself, so you feel better and sort of move you on the path that you're here to walk.
It's a philosophy I've never heard before, but I absolutely love it. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. What's a book that's impacted your life the most, or one you're excited about right now?
Oh, gee, I just finished one that was quite wonderful to read. This is Jeff Sutherland's book, Scrum. Basically the art of doing twice the work in half the time. And very much similar to how I sort of developed GTD, Jeff talks about the development of the Scrum process. Mm-hmm. Basically, he was a jet fighter, in Vietnam, pilot, and a lot of what he discovered is the way people work just doesn't work. There's a whole lot of wasted time. There's a whole lot of wasted energy. There's a whole lot of wasted stuff. And so he talks about the Scrum model. I've heard about Scrum and Agile and all that for years. And a lot of that and the awareness of that started at the same time GTD was published in 2001. So it's fascinating to read Jeff's book. It's a great read, especially for people who are trying to do anything with teams in any kind of an organization at all, small or big, doesn't matter. So I highly recommend that. Another great book was quite inspiring. A guy who's now a friend, one of the top cognitive scientists, cognitive researchers in the world, a guy named Daniel Levitin. He's head of cognitive science research at McGill University. Successful aging. So if you're over 50, you have to engage with somebody who's over 50 or think you're going to live over 50. This is an absolute must read. Daniel's book, that the reason I got to know Daniel, his previous book to this was The Organized Mind. And his book previous to that, I didn't read, but he was a professional musician, and he wrote Your Brain on Music, and then started to get enthralled with how the mind works, how music affected your thinking process. Anyway, so he has curated 4,000 of the most recent research things about as you get older, what improves, what denigrates, and how to take advantage of that stuff. So again, being 75 this year, this was sort of rang my bell, but very, and Dan's a great guy, GTDer, by the way. He knows my stuff, loves it.
That's amazing. I'll definitely have to check those out. I'm a certified Scrum Master and product owner, and use that to manage teams for quite a few years before I moved into the real estate space. And just kind of realizing that there's a system and a way of kind of dealing with things to get things done between a large group of people is really valuable. I mean, that is kind of, it's just a system and a way of thinking for managing a team versus managing your own mindset.
His point, very similar to GTD, is you don't need to change the person, just change the system, change the process. Change the process, and a whole lot of things happen. It's fine if you want to grow yourself and transform yourself and become a whole different person and be much greater and bigger or whatever. But you're going to do that probably by implementing processes where you don't have to change yourself that much. Just change the system that you're involved in. And that's,
That's such a big idea. So we've got two left here before we wrap up. Inspiration. What impacts have mentors made on your life, and how do you look at going out and finding great mentors?
I found mentors just because I was, usually scrambling and trying to find something to handle something I didn't know how to handle, and looking around for somebody who seems to have handled it. So, probably my biggest mentor in my life was my spiritual coach, a guy named John Roger. He's not on the planet anymore, but I ran across him in the end of 1971, and based upon experiences I had that I didn't understand, that it caused me to sort of derail my life because of my lack of understanding of it, and finding somebody who understood it, much better than me, and was, a little further down the road than me. So I'd figured I'd hang out with JR, as we called him, John Roger, until I ran to the end of whatever he could teach me, but I never found an end. So, I hung out with him for 50 years, learning that. A guy named Russell Bishop I met in terms of doing personal growth trainings, in the 1978, 79, early 80s, when personal growth stuff was kind of hot, the EST actualizations, LifeSpring kind of things. And we started Insight seminars then, and that was very inspiring to me to watch in just 5 days how people could truly change their lives, by a greater understanding of who they were and just all that good personal growth stuff. And, so Russell was a great mentor to me to show me, that you could do that. So, I followed along in his footsteps there. And then when I started my own consulting practice, a guy named Dean Acheson, whom I attribute in the book, taught me about getting stuff out of your head and deciding next actions about things. And I got to hang out with Dean for, a couple of years. As I started my own consulting practice, he had a great model. I said, wow, that's what I was after, was some really good model that I could use and to train with. So, I'm not looking for any mentors now, but boy, if they showed up, I'd probably take advantage of them. But I think usually mentors it's kind of like the teacher shows up when the student's ready, and the student shows up when the teacher's ready. And it kind of works both ways. So, I don't think it's necessary to go find a mentor unless what you're after, you don't, come on, finding somebody who's been the path that you want to walk on, ask any athlete. They've all got mentors. It doesn't mean, and what happens is that you use a mentor to be able to then, work their model, work their stuff, and then you start to personalize it for yourself. A really good mentor or trainer is going to make sure that they give you room to create your own version of whatever it is you're learning. And then at some point, they would just become friends. And like all those people are for me.
I love that. And finishing on this purpose, what drives you to live your best life every day?
Well, our purpose, at least career-wise and profession-wise, is to create a world where there are no problems, only projects. So, that will, if I make a dent, that's inspiring, because, the whole idea of anything that's a problem is really something you want to have change. You're just not really involved or in the driver's seat about making it different. And so that's a lot of what my work with GTD and my work and all of that. And so I've now got a network of people around the world that we've certified to do this training and coaching of this work. So helping support them, distribute this training and this methodology that we've been talking about. And it's really no more than what we've been talking about. It's just being able to get that to the people that might want it out there. And there's a lot of people that don't know it yet that would love to have it. So anything I can do to be able to get more there. If we had a world where, not a world of where people complain and worry. It's a world where people go, wait a minute, what's got my attention? What do I need to do? How do I get in the driver's seat about that? What do we need to do with that? So I figure that's going to, Stephen, it took me 25 years to figure out what I'd figured out, and then it was unique and nobody else had done it. That's why I wrote the book. And then I said, well, it's probably going to take me the rest of my life to figure out how to distribute this and get it to stick for people. Because it's not automatic. You're not born doing this stuff. It actually is something you need to learn and you need to practice. It's a cognitive muscle you need to train, to do this kind of thinking in this way. Could have fooled me. But, I just managed building a career around just doing that stuff and finding the best way I could to make that viable and sustainable as a way, for myself, and just to be able to create enough of a lifestyle. I'm not particularly entrepreneurial or aspirational. I've been more of a researcher and an educator than any of that. But, to just keep going without it, I couldn't stop.
Well, this has been amazing, David. Thank you so much for sharing these strategies with the audience today. Where can people find out more about GTD or get in touch?
Yeah, well, our website, gettingthingsdone.com, has got a pretty good overview of this methodology and all of our network of people around the world that are delivering these trainings and this coaching around this stuff. So, and there's a free newsletter you can sign up for there. And the books, if you're brand new to this, to your point, the book Getting Things Done might be a little daunting. I just put everything in there, so it's really a manual of what I learned in 25 or 30 years. But we just published the Getting Things Done workbook, which actually takes sort of one of the 10 steps that if you really want to go implement this right away, go do that. So that would be probably a good starting point for a lot of people if they're not familiar with this stuff already. If you've already read the book and gone, oh God, I should have been doing that. Yeah, right. Well, read it again. Take some time and get back on the wagon.
No better time to start again than now, you guys. And so I'll leave you guys as I always leave you to live a life worth inspiring others. And you can do so today by applying some of David's techniques and strategies, by going out and getting the book and applying this within your life so that you can start living a life with a clearer mind and actually getting things done. So thanks so much, David. It's the work that you've been doing is amazing. You've made an impact on my life, and I know that you've made an impact on millions of others. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephen. My pleasure.
It's wonderful that so many of you have stepped up and registered to partner in future multifamily opportunities together. We follow a very strict vetting process when selecting our operating partners, and all of which have a serious track record, at least 5 years of experience, at least 2,500 doors that they've actually managed and owned, and over $250,000 of assets under management. These kind of guidelines help make sure that we are investing together in some phenomenal deals. And you can learn more by registering at theinvestormindset.com/invest. These institutional style investments bring benefits to busy professionals and real estate entrepreneurs looking to reduce their taxes and increase their returns. And you can join us by getting started at theinvestormindset.com/invest. I look forward to seeing you on the next deal. Thank you for listening to the Investor Mindset Podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Head over to theinvestormindset.com to join the Insider Club, where we share tools and strategies from the top investors and entrepreneurs on how to take it to the next level.